Boom. So you told me a minute ago when we tried to do this live that uh, Julian Assange got married to
Yeah, big
Stella.
day.
Do you see a screen share
Stella
yet?
Morris.
Stella Morris. Do you see screen share yet?
Not yet. I'm just looking at myself.
Okay, that's fine. So I got it up. So that's interesting. Let's see what happened. What the media is saying about it.
Right? Not a picture perfect wedding. I mean, there was no press, no pictures or anything, no guests, just two witnesses, two guards, and
Well,
I
the
don't think.
press hates Julian Assange, obviously.
Yeah,
Why do you think
yeah.
that is?
With Western influence, I mean, the same reason why the Brits are holding him without charge and extraditing him to the U.S. Right? Pressure by the State Department and our intelligence communities. Right?
So they
Our
have a lot
government.
of influence in the media, don't they?
I would think so. Western media, of course. Yeah. Yeah, with NATO, with the Western media.
There was a New York Times piece like Friday or something. So I was looking at this Neil. Let me see this Neil Ferguson piece here. I'm gonna pull that up right now. I got it through Revolver, so I went to Revolver, which is actually pretty good. It's more like a news aggregator that just does occasionally does their own shit, but it's more like a news
Right? They had some good
aggregator.
breaking stories around January 6th. Revolver was one of
Yeah,
the
they
key
did
sources there,
those.
exposing
Yeah, they did
unindicted
those, but
co-conspirators.
it's more of a news aggregator, really. And the Neil Ferguson, he goes on, but the reason I bring it up here, I don't know why it has this huge advertisement comes up. If I can, it's got this huge. It won't let me do anything there. Okay. Will it let me? Okay, so he says, American official David Sanger reported for the New York Times on Saturday that American officials are divided on how much the lessons from the Cold War proxy wars, like the Soviet Union's war in Afghanistan, can be applied to the ongoing war in Ukraine. David Sanger reported for the New York Times on Saturday. And Neil Ferguson goes on to say in this article, according to Sanger, who cannot have written this piece without high level sources. So he
Oh,
says,
interesting. Okay.
well, this is just a good example of why the media is so intertwined with the how they're so intertwined with government and the relationship going on there, and because of that relationship, this journalist, part of his job is being friendly with government
Yeah.
officials. So it follows that they're going to have a relationship that's going to involve some quid pro quo. You carry water for me, I give you exclusive information. That's New York Times is really bad. They are. I
Sure.
mean,
Or we help take out your
mhm.
if you're in a lawsuit with other journalists, we'll help protect you and smear them, defame them,
Yep.
and destroy them, bury them with paperwork. Veritas.
Hmm. I heard something happened today with Veritas. Did you hear about that? I haven't looked into it yet.
No, I didn't see. They've had one bombshell report breaking after another.
FBI corruption or something. I haven't looked into it, so I wouldn't really comment on it. But I was
Right. We'll
looking
get
at
into
this.
that later for sure.
If yeah, maybe. If I mean, I haven't really looked into it. I haven't read into it at all because I was busy working. But so
Uh,
then Neil Ferguson, which his name is spelled kind of funny. I didn't realize his name was spelled Niall. How the fuck is that Neil? It's like nail. That's like nail Ferguson. Like you hit
Meow.
a nail with a hammer. But I guess he talks about. So he's. This is funny. So he spends the first like half of the article
Okay, so
talking
he's talking about
about.
some discrepancies between, the tactics used from the lessons from the Cold War applied to like the intelligence communities nowadays. Because tell me a little bit about this, because I have some ideas about,
About what?
about well, as far as the State Department and the Pentagon not being on the same page, it almost seems like we don't really know who's in charge, who's calling the shots. Um, is Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead, read some of the article first before I try
Well,
to
no,
jump in.
I like that line of reasoning. If you want to, I mean, well, what he's saying in this article, it's not just to be brief, but I like that line of thought there. But he's, to me, just hold that thought.
Yes.
To me, he goes through the first half of the article, and he says, let me see, blah blah blah. He says, there is no question that the Russian invasion force has sustained very high casualties and losses of equipment. So where he gets this, what his source right here, he has it. You can. It's a hyperlink. It goes to this
Sure.
Twitter account, Michael Bond. I'm not sure who that is, but I looked at his profile and there's nothing really especially interesting. Michael Bond, he's a non-blue check mark. I'd like to know more about him. But so he's citing this tweet from Michael Bond, which has information from OSINT. So I was like, what is OSINT? That's where he's getting a lot of this information.
Sure. Is there any way you
So
can screen share this Revolver article
I can,
that
you
you're reading
can't.
from?
I thought I
I
was
don't see
trying.
it yet.
I thought I did screen share.
Oh,
Screen
maybe in the
share.
live or maybe in the video afterwards I can see it, but right now I just okay. I was gonna say if you could share the Revolver
I'm trying
article.
to
I don't
share
want
it.
to
It says.
digress.
It says. Tell
There
me
it
when
is.
you see. Okay, the revolver
I see it
articles.
now.
It's not the revolver. So the it's. I got the article from Neil. The Neil Ferguson article is Bloomberg. So here's Bloomberg, but I got it from Revolver right
Oh,
here.
as an aggregator.
Yeah, because it's that's what I was saying earlier. I thought you could see the screen,
Okay,
but it's
Bloomberg.
fine. And so yeah, Revolver's more of an aggregator, which is decent. It's decent. And so they have this right here, which links to Neil Ferguson's article here. And so Neil Ferguson spends like the first half of the article. First of all, somewhere in this article, he calls Putin a fascist. So typical talking point. He is a Brit, and he is kind of like, by British terms, he's kind of a neocon, if you ask me. I don't know what your opinion is on that, but from what I've seen of him, he's kind of like a
Yeah. Pro
neoconservative
war.
Brit. A little bit. And so he says here there's no question that the Russian invasion force has sustained very high casualties and losses of equipment. And so then that's this. It's hyperlinked
Okay.
and it goes to this tweet,
Talking about the
which
first
is
week in the invasion, probably.
this it goes to this tweet. That's where he gets that he uses as a source. So this guy, Michael Bond, he's tweeting about
Source.
losses and he's making it look all very professional with numbers and with percentages and all this crap. But his main source is OSINT, which is actually this open source intelligence. So, open source intelligence, I don't know where they're coming from or all this, but if you can look at their website, you can see who they're rooting for and where they're coming from. We
They're
warned
another
you about
aggregator.
Putin, where we warned you about Putin, China. So they're talking about China, Putin, China, Russian. The Russian ship is sinking. Taiwan is learning from Ukraine. This is obviously neocon influenced type shit here.
Yeah.
So that's where he gets these numbers
Existing.
of sort of Russian losses, and then so Neil Ferguson says on the
But
one
of
hand
course,
he says
Russian losses can mean. I
which
mean,
no
yeah. Never
huh
mind.
go
No,
ahead.
no. Go ahead. I don't want to digress. No, 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 no.
Well,
Go ahead.
that's yeah. So he's like kind of taking both sides. He says, "Oh, their logistics is a mess." Blah blah blah. But then down here, he goes on really suddenly. He says, "Where is it at?" Uh,
maybe instinctively they just bury the lead halfway down the article anyways out of
I'm
habit. And
wondering
that's
what's
where the
going.
real
Yeah.
substantive information comes out.
Oh, and then right here. Um, hold on. As I write, it is true that the Russians put their hold on the encirclement of Kiev. Now you know what Alexander and the Duran said is that the reason
How
they
they're not taking cities, that they're actually trying to take over the military. They're the Clausewitz strategy. That's what
Clausewitz,
Alexander said.
Karl von Clausewitz, yeah, and Karl von Clausewitz. A little caveat to that,
A Russian
he was
strategist.
he was a Prussian, not Russian, Prussian.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of people confuse Prussia and Russia. Prussia is basically East Germany, and Prussia had a huge military. Or he may, I don't know if Karl von Clausewitz was Prussian off the top of my head. I'm assuming he was, but he was German, and he was in the 1800s. And the Prussians were notable as using a lot of his, following his philosophy, and the Prussians became the most powerful military in Europe, and they beat the French. They embarrassed the French in the Franco-Prussian War, even though even though the Prussians had less manpower and inferior equipment, inferior technology, and they embarrassed the French. And that's because
Really?
the Prussians had better leadership and better tactics. And so that Karl von Clausewitz was like, he said that you have like three goals. Two of them I remember off the top of my head. One is to disarm the enemy. That's demilitarization. So disarm the enemy. In any war, you want to disarm the enemy. The second thing you need to do is
Right.
take away their will to fight. So make it so that they don't want to fight.
Demoralization.
Demoralization, demilitarization. But anyway, so he goes on here somewhere to say that it's a foregone conclusion that the Russians are going to win the war. Oh yeah, it says given that the conventional war is like, so here he goes. Putin has the power to threaten with nuclear weapons, blah, 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 given that the conventional war is likely to turn in his favor. So he basically goes through the first like half of the article talking about how Russia's losing, how their logistics is a mess, their losses are a mess. And then here he says, given that the conventional war is likely to turn in his favor. Now, which is it, Niall Ferguson? Is it that you think he's losing or is he winning? And how is it that, given that they've
Right.
lost so badly, he doesn't explain how the Russians will supposedly turn this around given their abject failure so far in the war. So
He goes so far to say that.
he's
Wow.
covering his ass. I don't know.
Yeah,
Is
covering
he
his
covering his
playing
ass?
to multiple audiences
He
too.
is.
Because some
Well,
people will
you
read
have
the
to.
headlines.
Maybe
And
he
then
wanted
for
to.
posterity's sake, later on, he can say that he was more accurate. He could, the texts that were overlooked further down in the paragraphs, then he can
Yeah,
say
yeah.
that
Maybe
I was
that's
right
how he
all
got it
along.
past the editors and all that. Maybe that's how he got it through the editor. Because if he started with that line, it
Yeah.
certainly wouldn't have gotten published by Bloomberg. I don't think so.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is interesting when you break it down.
Yeah, I just noticed that. But then the second half of the article, somewhere he calls Putin a fascist or something, which is ridiculous. No, he's not. They call him, the best way I've heard him describe Putin is as a Christian nationalist or a Russian Christian nationalist, which is true. He's definitely anti-globalist, but as far as fascist, actually the United States regime is more fascist and the European regime is more fascist than, we want to talk
Yeah.
about fascism, what it is by definition. I would say the United States is closer to fascism than Russia. But yeah, so that was all I had to say about this article. It's a good article. I like the article, but it's funny how he takes both sides. The first half, maybe he just wanted to get it through the editor. I don't know. It's funny. And then the second half, he goes on to say how Putin is going to win the war and the sanctions aren't going to work and threatening China isn't going to work and Biden's a mess and blah, 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 blah. So It's interesting article, I
That's so
thought.
weird
But
he couldn't lead with that though. Like you said, it makes sense. It maybe wouldn't have got through the
yeah, you couldn't
past
lead with
past
that.
the
You're
end
right.
there.
You're right. But you were saying that, which is true. You were saying that you have
Different
the
factions
various.
within the U.S., within the
Mm,
intelligence community, that are at odds with each other, at least the way that I recall.
it's
Between the
true.
State
That's what.
Department, um, what's that?
Uh,
I started losing you.
that's fine. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's a good observation. It's true, and that's what happens when you have a leak, a leak, a week,
Weak leadership.
a week, especially executive. I mean, the whole point of a president is to lead the executive branch. But if you don't have strong leadership in the office of the president, then the bureaucracies just end up doing whatever the fuck they want to do, and that's
Yeah,
what's
that's the way it
basically
seems.
happening.
Right.
I'm not sure how I'm. What I now that the bureaucracies have free reign, who is going to bring them back under control and how? I mean, once this disastrous presidency is over, the next president is going to inherit these entrenched bureaucracies that now they're not gonna come back under the fold without a fight. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
I don't
right.
know how that's gonna work. What do you think?
Right. And they're already so emboldened. I mean, in the State Department, the Victoria Newlands and the Jake Sullivans
Mm-hmm.
out there with Anthony Blinken's, they're more and more emboldened. They were trying to lure us into this war. Like they were going so far as to try to bring what MiG-19s or something, some fighter jets into the border of Poland to start policing the airways and readying for an invasion. And the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, was like, "You guys are absolutely nuts!" Like,
Mm-hmm.
they're openly starting to talk about, biological research facilities. I mean, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know the admissions of these things, and now, like at first they didn't exist, and now they exist, and we need to keep them from falling into the Russians' hands because Russians are gonna try to pull a false flag and blame it on the Ukraine, which is like a tactic that the West has been the only one so far that has a history of doing this in recent memory. You know,
Of doing what?
well, I don't want to say that either because there's a lot of propaganda on all different sides, but it seems like everything coming out of the Ukraine side, the NATO side, whether it's like the Ghost of Kiev or Snake Island of propaganda, the hospitals in Odessa that were, supposedly bombed, and there
In
were there was
no, that
literature.
was
They
Mary, the
yeah,
maternity hospital.
Mariupol. No, but that's in Mariupol. That's where they had the humanitarian corridors, and the Ukrainians were saying that it was a trap, that Russians were killing people that were trying to leave, when in all actuality it could have been the Azov battalion. Who actually, did you hear about what they were doing? A lot of these LARPing like volunteers that wanted to go and fight for Ukraine, and they would give these people, they would just put them on the front lines or put them in
Mm-hmm.
some situation where they get slaughtered to use
Mm-hmm.
for PR, for propaganda.
Complete
um,
shit show.
yeah, complete shit show. But no, it
Complete.
was Odessa. There was a hospital, and they found brochures. I don't know if this could be disinfo propaganda, but from the Azov battalion showing like, tactics like from the Syrian rebels where they would have hospitals that were they would have a couple, like the bottom floors would be full of patients. They would have hostages. They would really hide under the cover of civilians, and then they would post up with their military above that. And then as soon as they got attacked, they would cry about you know that it was that it was an attack.
Yeah,
They're shelling
that's
civilians, and I mean
called
it's fog of war. But
that's called using civilians as human shields. There's a long tradition, a long history of military forces using civilians as human shields.
right,
That's nothing new. All
yeah.
sides have done it.
I was gonna say I don't want to act like the Russians are totally innocent here, but doesn't it kind of seem like they have like the tactics that they're using, how they really want to demoralize the Ukrainians? They want them to leave. They want the soldiers to abandon their post, and that would be counterproductive if they were really shooting soldiers in the back the moment that they tried to flee. So it
Yes.
just seems like a lot of the propaganda, especially because I'm naturally skeptic of Western media, but they lay it
Yeah.
on very, very thick. So
Yeah,
I
but
don't
I
know.
think I agree. No, that people are. I think people are seeing through it, though.
More so, yeah. How
Yeah,
embarrassing! I mean, to fall for a psyop over and over and over again to find out that,
because
once
if
again we're only fighting for our interest in a reason or in a region, and we're one of the biggest reasons of this conflict breaking out in the first place.
my dad used to say that pride is the easiest emotion to take advantage of in people. It's the easiest way to manipulate people is to play to their arrogance and their pride. So the thing about the propaganda is you have to some people will see through it, but there's some people who will refuse and they will continue. Like look what happened here. So
Isn't there a
you
Mark Twain
have
quote that goes with that? It's easier to convince a
probably
person that they've been manipulated, or it's harder to convince them they've been manipulated than it is to actually manipulate them, or something.
there it might be something like that,
I
but I
butcher
know
a
my
quote
dad used to
every stream. I butcher a quote. That's like a
I
new. That's
you know more of the quote than I
the
do.
thing I do now.
Um Yeah, he said that if you play to people's arrogance, their pride,
Your dad says
then
that.
you can always get them to do what you want. He used to talk about that. He used to talk. He
Butter
used
them
to
up.
actually collect leaflets that from Vietnam and stuff. I have them around here somewhere. I have leaflets, propaganda leaflets in here somewhere that he collected. Collector's items. But one thing is
About
said I
God
wanted to
Emperor Ho Chi Minh or something.
yeah, the stuff that North Vietnamese stuff and U.S. stuff, and he had these leaflets, and they're somewhere around here. Um, One thing that Neil Ferguson does say in this article, which I 100% agree with in this piece, is he says that the United States is going to try to keep this war going as long as possible. Now, he says that you know they genuinely believe, in the halls of power where these decisions are made. They genuinely believe that they can bleed Russia dry by basically using Ukrainians as human shields. I mean, that's basically what the United States is doing. But I don't believe they actually believe that. I think they just want to use this as another excuse to use
Yeah.
taxpayer money to give to their friends in the weapons industry
Oh,
and
sure.
then
Yeah.
send those weapons to Ukraine. So
Yeah,
that's
a lot of
my
Raytheon executives in Biden's cabinet too. You actually did a nice breakdown. I started watching one of your videos
yeah.
on the defense budget.
Mm-hmm.
Remember? Can you do a quick breakdown on that or something? It was
Well, it
like a
was just
few.
that it was talking about that $13 billion in Ukraine aid and how first of all, notice how fast they put that bill through. They put that bill through
Push that
super
right through.
fast. Maybe they were concerned about the war ending before they can get the bill through, and then they wouldn't have
By
justification
the way it's
to.
going, right?
Yeah, maybe yeah, exactly. If the press starts talking about because what's happening now is the press is starting to talk about how the Putin they're gonna win. The Russians are gonna win. They're starting to talk about
That's when
that,
the narrative
but
breaks down too.
yeah, the narrative's starting to break down. But look how fast they put that Ukraine aid through, and they did it because they knew that at any point the press would start having to talk about the reality. That was the reality the whole time, which was that the Russians were going to win, and then it wouldn't be as popular to be sending aid. Although they can still get away with it
Yeah.
now, so I'm sure we're going to see more aid going over there. But at
Or
some
when people
point they
start to figure
realize
out that we're funding neo-Nazis also in the region, and that a
people
lot
are
of the
start
Ukrainians getting killed are from other Ukrainians, going
yeah,
on
people are
14, 15,000 Ukrainians killed by other Ukrainians. Like,
over there in Donbass. That was Donbass,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And people are
Luhansk and
starting to
Donetsk.
figure that out. And so they
Yeah,
moved
it's not a
that
clear
bill.
conflict. It's not like, oh, Ukraine needs our help. It's like Ukraine is going through a civil war, and that we have an interest, we have a vested interest in sides, you know, that we're
Yeah, and
playing.
they put that Ukraine aid, of course, they put it like they always do, in a spending package that had to pass or else the government would have been shut down. And look how they just put it in there as soon as they could. And that was because it's not because they thought Ukraine could win. They all know the people that, I mean, of course, people like clueless people are. There's plenty of clueless people in Washington D.C. who probably think that Ukraine can win, but the people who really understand these matters know that Ukraine
Right.
cannot win. And they're just like I said, it's just an excuse not only to send weapons, but a lot of that money isn't for weapons. It's
Yeah. It's
it's
getting funneled.
allocated to it's allocated to each branch. I looked at the bill myself, and it's allocated to each branch of the military, and it's basically discretionary funds that they can use for whatever purposes they
Hmm.
want, so long as it's going towards something related to Ukraine. So what that means is that's contract money
Yeah.
that they're
Private
going to
contract.
give to contractors, to various contractors. They're going to write off all of this. Most of that, I bet you, will never make it to Ukraine. It's going to go to some contractors here in the
Oh, I
States, and they're
heard
going to
today.
say,
Well, did I lose
"Huh?
you?
Are you there?"
Okay. I thought I lost you. Yeah.
Oh, no,
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 I'm
it's
here.
fine. Yeah, so that's mostly contract money. And then if you want to get deep into how the military budget works, more than half or close to half, maybe a little more than half of the money that is allocated to the Department of Defense every year is for contracts and for contractors, not for that. It doesn't go
Yeah.
directly. It's going towards military contracts, which are either weapons or services on bases, construction companies, all sorts of stuff.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. The whole
it's a big
apparatus, the
money. It's a
whole
big money
complex.
pit, huh?
Sure. The whole defense contractor grift.
Yeah,
Military industrial complex.
it's a big grift, and
I also
people.
heard that Goldman Sachs is mediating now that they have the ability to profit off of, um, being an executor on these contracts. I guess I don't know how you'd say that. I
Being
heard about this morning.
probably they yeah maybe oh yeah that makes
The
sense. I
brokering the
understand what
deals,
you're saying. That makes sense.
right?
Of
More,
course.
more, favor quid pro quo, favor for helping Biden get elected. I guess kickbacks.
Well,
But
they
to
just
see
went in
that
on
have
the.
Wall Street too pissed off because another aspect where I've been hearing that it seems like the State Department's kind of out of control. The Biden administration um, maybe didn't really have a plan because, like what I'm hearing, the Federal Reserve was pissed off, Wall Street was pissed off about when they
Right.
found out the central banks in Russia were being sanctioned.
Yeah.
This pissed off a lot of people, right?
Yes. It would, because they need the central bank to do business with the Russian government. They need
Yeah.
to. I'm not a finance guru, but I do know that when they seized all of that money from the central bank, that's a big problem, because that
Yeah.
kind of destroys trust in the United States. You're not supposed to take reserves from a central bank just because you have some diplomatic row with them, because other countries will look at that and say, I don't. And see, the thing is those reserves were in the central bank, held in the United States, but for the Central Bank of Russia. But that's how other financial institutions and other big companies are doing business with Russia. They do it through the central bank reserves here in the United States. So when they
Okay.
seized all that's not going to make people happy. That is money that could be going to Goldman Sachs, or not. They're an investment bank, to, like, a big bank, to pay back a loan that the Russians took. And it's like, what the
Mhm.
fuck are you doing? So yeah, they're not going to be happy
Right.
about
And
that.
I Yeah, and they expect them to pay their bills in U.S. dollars still also. Like, um, and now I guess they're starting to
You're you're
make
you're
demands because Russia is still going to follow their foreign. Am I breaking up?
uh I can't.
I
Oh,
was saying
hello.
Russia's keeping up on their obligations to. Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me?
Nah, I can barely hear you. Kind of went out for a second.
Okay, that's better.
Oh, I can hear
Can you
you
hear me?
now. I can hear you better now. Yeah, but now I don't have your pick. Uh oh,
No?
your signal's bad. I think it's your signal now, not mine.
Okay.
You
Okay,
there?
I'm back. Can you hear me?
You're breaking up. Your signal's
Yeah.
bad. Uh, well,
Um,
I don't hear you. I don't have your picture on here either for some reason. Can you hear me? Is that my
yes, I
signal?
can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me? Your signal is bad now. That's your signal, not my signal. But I don't have your picture on here anymore either. I don't know why. Oh, there you go. Okay, I
If
got
I
you back
disconnect
on
and
here.
reconnect,
No, huh? Yeah, your signal is bad.
what about now? Can you hear me?
It's not your
Okay.
it's your signal. Your signal is bad.
Okay, I'll try that again.
Now I see. I hear you now. There you go. Your
Are you still
signal was.
recording?
Yeah, we're still recording. No, it never stopped.
Good.
Who cares? It's no big deal. But we were on a roll. So
I know, right?
yeah. So I don't know where we were at though. That kind of we can segue off to the next topic. I don't know if there is another topic. Uh, we have
This is a
what
big
else did
one.
he?
I started getting into something. We were talking about sanctions on Russia, and I started to bring up how Russia now they're still fulfilling their obligations to send natural oil and natural gas to Europe, but
Hmm.
now they're saying that they're going to accept denominations in rubles only. You
Yeah,
heard about this? This has a
I heard
major
about that.
impact, right?
That's
What kind
huge.
of ramifications is this going to have for the
It's the
dollar as the reserve
petrodollar.
currency here? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And so far Russia hasn't really retaliated much, but once they start, if they have the upper hand, you can be sure they're going to use it, and they do. They're starting to have the upper hand. The ruble it hasn't collapsed yet.
Yeah.
Um, I think
Now it's steady
I heard
climbing.
interest rates went up like to 20% in the Russian bond market. Some interest rate, some benchmark interest rate, which to me is probably the sign of a healthy economy and a healthy market, because interest rates in the United States are artificially low, and it's not good. It is a sign of a manipulated market, whereas
Yeah.
Russia
Propped up.
seems. Yeah, and Russia seems to have a strong market because the interest rates went up to 20%, and as long as they can absorb that, which they probably will,
Hmm.
then I think that's a sign of a healthy market. I mean,
Yeah,
people
they're
talk
net
so
exporters too.
they're huge exporters of exactly. And the other thing about Russia is they've been the government and the central bank in Russia have been orders of magnitude more responsible than the United States government or the central bank. Okay, they have low debt, they have very little debt. They have huge amounts of gold reserves in their central bank. Okay, I mean they have done their monetary policy so much more responsibly than the United States over the years. So I think Russia's
It,
going to be in good shape. This whole
yeah,
fantasy
go
about
figure.
them,
And getting around sanctions for so many years too might make them a little stronger and more sovereign and independent too. Go figure.
it's like this. At the end of the day, they're a huge natural resources producer, not just oil and gas, but they produce they have every sort of raw material you can think of. And that's real wealth. That's real assets that have real
A real sound
value.
economy.
Well, it's just that the United States economy is based off of debt and turning and using and the
Yeah, using
financial
leverage.
businesses. Yeah, and it's like financial businesses. It's like the stock market and crypto and all this, but that's not real wealth. Real wealth, I would argue, crypto might turn out to be real wealth. I haven't really. I'm not sure on it yet. We'll see, but that's the Russians have real wealth. They have natural resources, minerals, energy, timber. They're like one of the biggest wood timber producers in the world,
Oh yeah,
and
fertilizer and wheat and like
fertilizer,
nickel
ne-
and blue cobalt, all kinds of
neon
essential
gas,
superconductor materials.
all sorts of shit. And it's like, okay, so they're always going to have people that are going to want to buy that, and there's always going to be customers that want that shit. And then look what India's doing. India said fuck off to the West. We're gonna side with Russia more or less, and China, and man,
We're losing allies quick.
yeah, but that's the sign of a declining empire. That's what if you look at what's happening right now. I did a video. Okay, I've done a couple videos where I want to make an episode one day where I just go through some of these videos and talk about what I got right, because there's a couple things I got really right. One was the inflation. I did a video like 6 months ago. I called it. And then the second one, I did before Russia invaded Ukraine. I did a video, and I was right in some respects and wrong in some respects. Wrong in that I said that Russia, if they do anything, they're going to just invade eastern Ukraine. That's what I thought. So I was wrong about that. But what I was right about is that this whole episode, this whole affair.
Yeah, their whole campaign was surrounding this. That was their pretext.
What's that?
Their pretext was, Putin's words, liberating eastern Ukraine, the Donbass regions, and, Zelensky was, he said he was the illegitimate leadership. There was a NATO puppet that was not acknowledging signed treaties, Minsk Accords.
Well, I don't know if Putin ever directly called. I don't know if Putin ever directly called him a NATO puppet.
He called himself a liberator, though. The way his pretext for, it was about the East. It was about Eastern Ukraine.
But it was really, that's what he was saying. But it was really about. It was about United States. Really, this war is about the United States and about Europe. And it's about them messing around in Ukraine. That's what it's really about. I mean, the East is a good pretext, certainly, given that you have, so many people died over the last 8 years and all this. It's definitely a good pretext, but it's really about the United States. Yeah, and it's really about also the fact that the United States is weak right now. So that's why he took advantage of that situation. He knew that the United States is weak. These people like Putin.
Yeah, they don't have strong. We don't have strong leadership, and we're scrambling to come up with decisions, like you were saying. So
they understand. It does seem like
the opportune time.
Niall Ferguson says it best in this article. I love the line I really like in the beginning. The language people speak in the corridors of power. I had to take you off a screen share because of the signal. But I'm going to read it out to you. At the first line in this piece that Niall Ferguson wrote is this: the language people speak in the corridors of power is not economics or politics. It is history. I love that. So that's true. I said this before, I think, in another video. These people that are in positions of power, they don't want to understand. They don't want, well, a lot of these people, though, that are really running shit, they do not want Americans to know history. They don't want the average person to understand history, but they sure as hell do understand history. And Vladimir Putin definitely understands history, so he can just take one look at what's going on in the United States right now, and he can say, this is a declining empire, and this and it's time.
Our culture war bullshit.
Everything about it. Yeah, the decadence, the culture, the culture. Look, there's no more innovation left, and there's no more innovations in art, in music, in film. Everything is stale. That's a decadent culture. And then the leadership is terrible, and Putin saw that, and he can compare it to past, knowing his history. He can say, wow, this kind of looks like Britain in the 1920s. This kind of looks like the Netherlands in the 50s or 40s. So he said, this looks like a declining empire. Now it's time to make the move. It's time. And he knows, because he knows his history. But if you look at everything from the perspective of the United States is a declining empire, it's an empire in decline, then you can basically map out everything that's going to happen at this point. You can map out. I said in that video, back to what I was saying a minute ago, what I was trying to get across is I said in this video that whatever happens, The United States is going to get diplomatically embarrassed once again. That was my saying. It was in one of my videos. And that on that I was 100% right. It looks like this is going
It's
to
getting
end
worse
up
and worse by the
this is going
day. Also,
yeah, this is going to be end up destroying America's credibility on the world stage
yeah.
even more. Okay,
When we're condemning
Afghanistan.
Russia like this, oh my God, if we come into a country so heavy-handed,
Yep.
decimating civilian populations,
Yep.
not taking civilian life into consideration,
Yep.
just bombing cities, and then we are here condemning and condemning, and it's like, like they want people to have no concept of history, like you were saying, really. It's just,
They don't
it's
want the
mind-blowing.
average person to. They don't want the average person to understand history at all. They do their darn best to keep people historically ignorant. They do their
Yeah.
darn best.
I was talking
They
to somebody at Evelyn's last night, and my God, he had to bring up the subject of Ukraine, but I forgot what he said. Like, oh, Putin's a madman. Oh my God, he's gonna blow up the whole world, and it was just madness. And he was like, "This is all Trump's fault. This is all Trump's fault." And I wanted to say, I didn't even want to get engaged into an
some of it
argument,
is
but
though but they always want to go to Trump because these
yeah,
people
yeah,
they're still obsessed with him, which I find hilarious. They're still like everything like these people cannot let go of Trump. I let go of Trump.
yeah.
I
That has
let go
exploded
of him.
with the Russian narrative. The um Orange Man was a puppet of Russia, all this nonsense, like Russia, Russia, Russia. They're behind every door. They're involved in every layer of our government. And oh my God, Russia, they're, you know, and now all of a sudden with Putin invading, their heads explode and they're like, it's
Well,
all true. It's all quantifiable to
you
them
have to look
now
at it this way. They
after
were
the,
all of the Russia Gators were embarrassed in the last year and a half from the Sussman indictment, and
if they even know about it though.
but they stopped talking about it in the media, which means, yeah, of course, a lot of people still think that
They're like
Russiagate
Igor
was a thing.
Danchenko, like who? They don't even know. They don't know anybody that was involved in the scandal that were indicted or that
That's
under oath
true.
they
That's
admitted.
true. But I think a lot of them have a sense that RussiaGate was bullshit. Even so, because they don't talk about it. You don't see people tweeting about it. Of course, the media won't
Yeah.
talk about it. So I think they understand. A lot of people do. But then
Or
this
they're on to the
happens,
next manufactured
right?
consent.
Because they don't want to cope with the fact that they got taken for a ride for so long. So they're going to go to the next thing so they can forget about the last thing that they fell for. It's kind of like it's a defense mechanism in the human brain. It's like something like going so crazy over Russiagate for 5 years and then finding out that it was all a scam put together by, well, the Durham investigation's not going to get to the real bottom of it. They're just going to go after Clinton's lawyers, okay? They're not going to go after the deep state people. Okay, yeah, they're going to use them as fall guys. But the end result is the same. It's going to be...
It was political tabloid trash and garbage. It was
it was a psyop, whatever you want to call it. But this way, they don't have to cope with the fact that they got taken for a ride so badly.
Yeah.
They can go on to the next thing and forget about the last thing. Just like with COVID, they don't want to.
Yeah.
They don't want to admit. I think a lot of these people know it, or there's a subconscious sort of thing being buried deep inside. They're like, "Oh my God, I'm such an idiot for falling for the lockdown, mask, vaccine, all this." And
But now
so,
that it comes out, the Hunter Biden laptops are verified or validated. Like, how do they not reconcile with this? Like, the people that still think, well, this is all Trump's fault, not realizing that when he asked simple questions about the relationship, the Biden relationship, he gets impeached for it. Like, these all the corruption that was going on there. The moment Trump tries to shine a light on it, like they impeach his ass over for it.
Again, it's pride. It is. Okay, I'm going to pretend like that didn't happen because...
And the fucker was right all along, too. And then, no vindication ever.
No, but, Trump... Look. Trump could have handled a lot of things better the way he...
With Ukraine?
With everything. I mean, he could have handled a lot of things a lot better.
Sure, yeah.
It's like the Duran people say, he seems to have this infatuation... with neoconservatives, and I don't know what that's all about, but I agree. It's like, He had Pompeo there, Mike Pence. You have John Bolton. You had so many others. The guy Gravel, he's a fucking
Mhm.
neocon too. The gay guy that was the head of the State Department, he's a
Yeah.
fucking neocon. But
Right. National
yeah, you're right.
security. Rick Grinnell.
These these normies that say shit like that, they're just trying to protect their own ego. So they're gonna say, oh, this, even though they realize, a lot of them, that the RussiaGate shit was nonsense. They're gonna tell themselves, oh, this vindicates everything with RussiaGate. This vindicates everything, But I don't
Hmm.
think they really deep down inside actually believe that, Like it's like the mind defending itself from being embarrassed. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
It's kind of a defense mechanism. I don't know how else to explain it, but um, yeah. So what else? What else can we talk about? Is there? I don't think there's much else from. I can't think of anything to talk about at the moment. Assange got married. That's interesting. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's kind of nice, right?
what are we at? We're at how many minutes?
Like 45
Probably
minutes.
make it. Probably make it a short one. Oh, we're at 45 minutes, so we can call it a day, and I'll just go ahead and publish this as is. So
Cool. Okay.
we said
Come
some
on, all
shit.
right.
We did some shit. All right. You have a good
Awesome.
night.
Nice chatting with you.
All
Time
right. Good
run.
night.